What's up, guys? Hopefully everybody's doing well after a wonderful Masters weekend. Springtime is here. Here in Michigan, we're ready to play a little golf. And really excited after watching Rory defend and go back-to-back for the first time since Tiger Woods did it a few years back. So really cool. We're going to talk a lot about the Masters today on the podcast and a few other things. But springtime is here, so just want to remind you, anyone in West Michigan that's looking for in-person golf instruction, now is the time to book your lessons. Head to dnagolfinstruction.com, and you'll see my schedule book for Blythefield Country Club, where I'm the director of instruction, and also a few times here and there on Mondays when I'm free at Indian Trails. So please use that as a resource for rates, offerings. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, I do want to start getting more group lessons, corporate lessons. I think that's a great way to learn, make it fun. And the group energy tends to lead directions that I really like. So if you have a business, a small business, a large corporation, and want to use golf as a way of team building or just an exciting way to celebrate your staff, please reach out, info@dnagolfinstruction.com. But let's get into this Masters. What a wonderful Masters. This is probably one of the best Masters weeks that I've had in a while. Watching, enjoying, even the chasing a little bit on Saturday and Sunday. Really fun to watch. And, Rory McIlroy did his thing and defended, for the first time. And I think last week I kind of had him as my predicted winner. So hats off to Rory, hats off to me for figuring it out. I did that. See that? I did that. I'm just joking. But it was good to see, and I thought he would be comfortable, now not dealing with, the stresses of having to win or, the worry of if he'll ever win, now that he has all four majors and had the Grand Slam. What a great way to come into major season. I think someone was quoted as talking about the major season is 16 rounds, right? And now 4 of them are over, and he did a heck of a job in that first event. I'm looking for this to continue. He might win another one. I don't think he's going to win all 4, but he could win again. Just so talented. That swing is powerful, balanced. I know it's strong and fast, but yet it looks controlled and not over crazy or over swinging at all. I didn't see any parts of that. Under control of his move and also why he performed so well. But he mentioned being at the Masters for several weeks. I think the last 3 weeks going back and forth and getting a chance to play the facility. He was there for the women's AM. He was there for the drive, chip, and putt. Had several times to play the golf course. So mentally, we talk about state of mind a lot, and he had a great state of mind going into this event. And it paid off. He got off to a great start, great lead after the first 2 days, and I wouldn't say stumbled on day 3. I think the golf course did what the golf course normally does there in Augusta, and caught up with him, and his mistakes cost him. Especially pulls. Missing left and pulling left of his target was a big problem. You don't want to do that with wedges in your hand at a course with greens like that, and it cost him a little bit. But let's give him some respect and talk about how he recovered from that and how he finished strong and didn't collapse. He's a field player, and sometimes field players will, have their offs and ons and ebbs and flows and good holes and bad holes. And, there's always a chance that Rory could blow it, but he didn't do that. He played well, hit several shots well. The drive on 13 comes to mind. He even mentioned that. He crushed that. After missing it 3 straight days in a row, he puts it right where he's supposed to. But Rory being Rory, he didn't take advantage of it really by, pulling the next shot left and long of the green. Safe miss. And got away with one there. But it was great to see him win, and I'm thinking that he has a chance to win more this year. Hats off to Scotty. Scotty Scheffler had a great comeback. He mentioned feeling like Friday was a little softer than he anticipated, and maybe that added to something. Of course, Brandel Chambly, mentions that, softer greens are typically easier to score on. So what's he using that argument for? And, I hate to agree with old Brandel, but this time I think I do. I think that, the Masters facility and what they do in Augusta there, it's by plan. And, the conditions and 85 and sunny with breeze off and on. They had the conditions that they wanted to put the golf course in front of the world that they wanted. So, I don't really care. Scotty is most of us, athletes in general, golfers even more so, we find reasons for, for stuff that work for us. And just come up for reasoning. But, to birdie 3 straight on the back 9 on Sunday, even after those struggles on the first 2, he put himself in the position, and Rory needed that extra stroke, with the bogey on the last hole there. So hats off to Scotty as well. He's another one that I could see winning, a major this year. It seems to be a little looser with his driver. I don't know if it's new equipment that's the issue, or if it's just something with his technique. It is a very loose move where, I think the lot of it is relying on his tempo and timing. But boy, is he resilient, even after misses. Even I think him on 15, blasting one way right, trying to chip out, catches the tree, has about 185, 190 to the green and puts it in a great position to give himself a chance. And then he drains the long birdie putt. So I thought that was pretty sweet. No emotion out of Scotty, though, right? Whenever we see something good like that, I wish I could see a little bit of emotion, but it's just straight face, walks up, picks his ball up, but that's how he plays, and that's probably how he stays so consistent in good times and in bad times. Level-headedness, kids, for all my junior golfers out there, even the basketball players that are in the zone or the basketball players that are, playing well. It's about being level-headed and realizing the moment, but staying in it. If you start to realize it too much, then you're gonna come out of those moments. So Cameron Young played well. As I mentioned last week, I thought he wasn't quite ready, and a handful of shots here and there. He put the ball where he was supposed to a lot of times off the tee. I couldn't believe how there would be some holes. Even there was one where Rory hit the stinger low driver, and Cameron Young took his regular swing, and Rory was consistently past him by 10, 15 yards. And that's crazy because Cameron Young crushes it. But it just lets you know how far these guys hit it. And it's impressive. Wonder what was going on with Colin. Excuse me, Colin Morikawa. They didn't show his swings, but obviously we kept hearing about his back hurting, and he looked very interesting, we'll say, picking up his golf ball on every hole. But I wonder what was going on there. He withdrew from the players with the back injury after taking a practice swing, and I'm a person that I'll tweak my back every now and then. That's why I'm careful about weightlifting this time of year. Kind of have a lighter, more band work than deadlifting, I would say. But gutsy performance, and boy, he had a lot of birdies on the last day. That last round, 4 under. That's quite impressive. And 9 under for the tournament, tied for 7th. That's a heck of a tournament when your back goes out on you. So it takes guts, and it proves my point, guys. I keep trying to say this. Like, okay, if his back is hurt and he's got to swing super hard and rotate and throw everything at it, how is he able to shoot that number? I don't think he is. I think he had to calm some things down, play for positioning, and that's a smarter way to play golf for most of us, that aren't the highest performers in the world when it comes to golf and our golf game. So I think watching someone with an injury, he's not going after it. And that takes a lot of grit And, he performed really, really well under the pressure and under the lights, even with that injury. So that was really cool to see. Justin Rose, challenging again, didn't quite get to the playoff this year like he did last year in the Masters, but, in his older age, I think he's 45 now, and struggles down the stretch, but velocity's there, the ability to put himself in position. Never was really in the lead, on Friday and Thursday and Friday, but really made his presence felt on the weekend. I learned a lot from him too, and he's another one, guys. He's a guy that hits it far. There's a good shoulder turn there, but I don't see him using a lot of extra energy or exerting, like a big whip or a big rotation through the golf shot. It's a slower, calmer move. And I just want to encourage people to try that, just because I think that's the side of the spectrum that most of these players are on most golf shots. Not just the drives, but let's look at the approach shots that they're hitting, the wedge shots they're hitting, the shots that they're shaping from around trees and inside of the pine trees there, pine needles. So there was a lot to learn, and I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. We're probably going to talk about that here in a minute. But course conditions to me, it was awesome. You could tell they were drying it out a little bit. As I mentioned, in past podcasts, courses can look brown when they're dry, but they're still pure and rolling good. And at sometimes you could look at, some of these approach shots into these greens, and it would look like turf. It literally looked like turf. Crazy. I have to see it one day. As a PGA professional, I get in for free, so I need to make that happen one day. And I have a guy, a coworker, and a buddy in my office that just became a PGA professional, so he's excited to go, and he might drag me down there next year to take a look and see what it looks like. But conditions were good, looked good on TV. Rory didn't make it easy. That shot on 15 into the green that landed short and should have rolled back into the water, it didn't. And I think the only reason it didn't is because he hit it so heavy that the ball just kind of jumped forward a little bit. And that was a game changer for him, and he got lucky there. But we know that element is needed in all golf, and, one lucky shot's not bad. So really enjoyed seeing him winning. It was good seeing him hugging his wife and his kid afterwards. I know there's been some issues in the past there, I believe, and now he's tied. 6 majors, tied with Lee Trevino. And I think he's got goals to get at least another 3, and I think he could get more than that before it's all said and done. He's only 36 years old, and he's healthy. And it's a big difference between that and Tiger. It's sort of sad, and I was thinking about that the other day. Tiger really started to fall off around that age, right? Like health-wise. Stints where he could play and couldn't play, could play, couldn't play. And, part of me feels robbed of what we should have seen. Golf is interesting that as we age, and I'm in my mid-40s now, I'm smarter than I've ever been. And I'm looking forward to even this year playing better golf. Steve Stricker had a good latter part of his early 40s and early 40s maybe to early 50s. I remember Stuart Appleby was another person that picked up speed in his 40s. Phil Mickelson played well in his 40s. You're supposed to play well. Justin Rose, as we mentioned earlier. If you're healthy, you start to understand how to play the game, and you can start sneaking some wins out. But Tiger was so unhealthy. Obviously we know with the, whatever he's dealing with now, and then the physical side as well that kept him from playing. He should easily have those 18 majors, guys. But the body fell apart. That Navy SEALs training wasn't a good idea, maybe. just made some poor decisions perhaps that affected his body and his health. But with that being said, and with Rory McIlroy, I think we have that opportunity to see what we should have seen from Tiger. We might see it from him. I'm cheering for it. I think he can hold that torch. The torch is his now. I hate to say I've lost all faith in Tiger, but this is kind of my last straw as far as performance-wise and thinking he can do whatever and come back and play. I think he's more folklore than anything now. It's a legend. Maybe he can do it on the senior tour if he's healthy enough to do that. Maybe even in a cart, but it's over, right? So Rory might be the next guy that can kind of do things at an older age and maybe duplicate Jack's major win at the age of 44 and some of this stuff. I know Tiger had his win in 2019, but I think he had the ability, the mind, the game, the talent to do that a lot more than the one time that we saw it in 2019. So I'm cheering for Rory, and a lot of humps, man. Like I said, some family stuff there. Good seeing mom and dad at the master ceremony there as well. But the family stuff is calm. This Live PGA Tour stuff might be calming down. Looks like the PGA probably won the war of attrition, which we expected. And now these guys will start coming back. Patrick Reed played pretty well this week. Kind of slowed down on Sunday. So did Terrell Hatton. So, as I mentioned in the last podcast, I love seeing the Live guys play well. I want the best guys in the world playing all the time on my tour, on the PGA Tour. So I'm hoping they all find ways to play in more events and even sneak into some of these signature events at some point. So good to see, man. So I'm hoping it continues for Rory, and he does it for the old guys once he does get into the 40s. And I'll be watching. And it's time for me to get my kids like really watching golf and playing golf and doing all the things that I've been talking about doing. And even this week I made them watch a little bit, during breakfast or different meals, or I called them to the TV when Sam Burns was on. Here in West Michigan, we just got a Raising Cane's restaurant, and my kids like going there. So we've been there a handful of times. But Sam Burns had sponsors, and he had his Raising Cane symbol on his collar. So I was like, hey, look, kids, there's a guy that's sponsored by Raising Cane's. They're like, oh. So we watch him play for a little bit and getting their feet wet. And their ages 14, 11, 8. Now it's time. The little one has the best golf swing of them all, but now they need reps, and it's time for Dad to kind of get them out. And this year I'm hoping to do so. It's golf season now. It's spring. Still dealing with a lot of rain off and on. But when that sun is out, I'm trying to play, or at least get outside and enjoy it. Have a range session or two, and I've already had one good range session. Working on a handful of things, just like the rest of you, trying to hit it far. But I'm not trying to overswing anymore because I only have one back, and it's getting older. So range of motion, really working on the gym and on rotating elements and torso and upper torso and shoulders and everything else, and hope to stay active in the gym all year long. As I get into the golf season this year, and I want to play. I want to play golf. I don't play a lot of golf from year in and year out, and this year is the year for me to start playing. I think the average maybe 7-8 rounds. No, not even that many. I think last year with fall golf, maybe I had 8 rounds. But prior years, it's like 5, 6, because I'm spending too much time teaching, doing videos, and trying to grow this golf business. But I miss playing golf, so using my kids as an excuse to get out, friends, family, my girlfriend, just using everybody's. You guys are my excuses to play golf. And even my golf clients get stuck on the lesson tee like a lot of you pros out there. And I think it's more beneficial if we can get on course with our clients. They can see things in us that they might not be picking up on in golf lessons. We can see how they navigate a golf hole and really find the more dynamic reasons for struggle, right? Adding alignment, adding pressure, adding the elements that real golf provides is a lot different than being on the range where it doesn't count. We're the only sport where we practice on a range and off of the golf course. Football players practice on the field. Basketball players practice on the basketball court. Tennis players practice on their court. So we need to be on course and hopefully getting the opportunity to play a few holes every now and then with our clients. And that goes for me. That goes for my kids. That goes for everybody that I'm involved with. And this year, that's sort of a goal of mine. And what's the better alternative? Have my kids play more golf or let them sit on these tablets and these devices all day long? So that's another reason why I'm going to kind of force this issue with outside activity. Not just golf, but swimming. And I'm going to get them more involved in the business. What my 11-year-old wants to do more with the video stuff, and then the older is going to help with communication. So I'm excited about that. But we've been doing a lot of bike rides already this spring. It's been a lot of fun. My hip flexors are sore because we're doing a lot of them. Take the dog on a long walk, and then the girls hop on their bikes, or we'll all just hop on our bikes and just cruise around and take trips and do some things. So it's been a lot of fun this spring, and like I said, trying to find clever ways to get these kids off of their devices and into more practical things. And golf, is one of those things that I really need to get these kids involved in, and other parents out there. It's not that you have to be over their shoulder, but the more we get them out there, the more they enjoy things, the more we have conversations about golf, nature, the deer you saw, the fox you saw, the ice cream you had afterwards, right? There's a lot of things that we can do to attach the game of golf to our family and outdoor activity. So hopefully you're like me and trying to find new clever ways to get outside as we get into the spring and into the summer. And a lot of people have asked me, why have I decided to start doing this podcast? And it's funny because one person asked me, I said, because of you. You told me I needed to start. He's like, oh, I did say that. And I had a lot of people that just like to ask questions or dig into the game of golf a little bit more. In my mind, the game of golf it's very relatable to the game of life, what we deal with in our work. There's a lot of different pressures, anxieties, good and bad, that happen on the golf course that we can relate to other parts in our life. As a professional, if I'm having a long, stressful day and decide to go play a couple holes and I hit a few bad shots, I might feel a little stressed and need to go in. This isn't fun right now. Right? And that happens on occasion. And just to say that there's a mind state that we have to control on and off the golf course. And I think it's similar in all parts and all aspects of life. And, it's up to me to be able to sort of translate more than golf instruction, because the game of golf is more complicated than that. My daughter, we were talking about stress and, depression and anxiety. And, she's been reluctant to want to practice and let dad do his magic on the golf course. But she doesn't understand that a lot of those pressures and anxieties we deal with as golfers. And watching Rory McIlroy have a big lead going into Saturday and losing that lead, having to sleep all night on that, and then come back the next day and perform, there's a lot of technique that goes into calming the mind there. And I told her that a lot of these professionals have psychologists that they work with, teams of people that help them understand how to control their anxiety under pressure. breathing techniques. That's why everyone has a pre-shot routine that they stick to. They like the same caddy that they've had forever because there's a certain comfort with that person. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about that I might be able to translate from, a personal side and then bring it back to golf, or from a golf side and then bring it to your real life. I tried to do that the last few weeks with the NCAA tournament and looking at it from a coach's perspective and seeing what the coach is trying to get accomplished with his players and having them execute. And when is he stern? When is he nice? What's the mentorship looking like for some of these coaches? Then I look at the players and are they performing well? Are they able to execute under pressure? Can they play good in a game and then know that they have another game in 3 or 4 days and duplicate that same performance? So from a sports perspective, we see all of the different ways that we can compare golf to those other sports, from a sports perspective, a mental perspective, from a stress perspective, and an anxiety perspective. And I think the podcast is my way to talk about stories related to those other sports that I played and like and watch now, related to how I was raised, the good things that my mother and father taught me, the things I'm trying to learn as a parent, and then also bringing it, to a funner light, right? We're here to have fun and to not make this always stuffy. Sometimes it needs to be, but not all the time. And this is my place to kind of let my hair down, as you say, and talk about, golf, life, sports, and everything else in a different way. So all that, and I think it does fill a void in my business. There's some ties in here with letting you guys know what's going on with DNA, what's going on with some of my best students, what I'm learning on the fly, and what even my golf philosophy is. And if you chime in, some of these things might help you as a parent, might help you as an instructor, might just help you as a follower or somebody who's here for entertainment purposes. And that's what this is, guys. It's all about entertainment. And I hope that you guys are enjoying this, and I hope to share more of whatever you guys like and whatever I think is good and what I can provide to you. Okay. And with that, podcasting as a form of entertainment, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and this sort of came up from that. There's a combination of podcasts that I listen to that, will sort of, hopefully I remind you of some of them. Obviously I like the Joe Rogans. Those have always been cool. Dan Patrick's show was one of my favorites. Been watching it for years. And there's a lot of them in between that we'll talk about, sort of learning from. And I don't mind doing that. W.E.B. Du Bois says, put your best out there. By being great, we show others how to be great. So I'm learning how to be great from you guys, and then hopefully I'm showing some other people how to have courage and be great and step out there as well. But I was curious to know, what's your favorite form of entertainment? As I mentioned before, I listen to podcasts quite a bit, but what's yours? Is it podcast? Is it music? Music could be something that you listen to when you work out, more from a personal perspective at home, in your Google devices or whatever, your Alexas. Or it could be a person that likes to go to concerts or follow a particular group around, or a musician around. Is it sporting events, going to sporting events? I have a couple of friends like my buddy Malcolm. What's up, Malk? Who always gets together with his buddies. And, he's loving this whole Big Ten with West Coast teams in it because he lives in L.A. But he's a alumni of Michigan State. And, him and his buddies will get together, in L.A. when Michigan State's playing in a high-end basketball game or football game. So he likes to travel to some of these things. It's something I like to do, but I don't know, man. I don't like crowds. I don't like airplanes. Not afraid of them. I'll get on one. But, I don't know. Sometimes those airplanes, I don't like the product. I don't like giving my money to a product that's not bad, inconsistent. They can cancel my flight when they want to. I got a real problem with that. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say any names, but these these companies that get your food for you and deliver it. Like I don't need a company to go to McDonald's and bring it to my house, man. That's more time. That's more hands on my food. We gotta stop doing that, man. You know, I get pizza delivery a little bit, but even me, I'm going to pick it up. Text order it, 5 minutes up the street. It's as hot as it's gonna be. I don't have to worry about tipping anybody. I ain't got to worry about anybody eating part of it or touching it. So I'd rather go pick it up personally. But we'll get off that gripe. It's one for another day. But what do you guys like to do, though, for entertainment? Of course, there's the nature guys, the hunters, fishers, campers, boat life people. I get all that. I'm not a hunter. I have some golf friends that are. My buddy Adele is big into fishing. I remember every time we would golf, he'd talk about a fishing trip. Sometimes he would fish in the morning with his uncle or grandpa, and then he would play golf with us at like 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. So I get that. And the rituals of doing some of this stuff, especially with family members, that might also, kind of have you thinking about your entertainment. I think of old shows that my dad used to watch and even my grandpa used to watch. My grandpa used to watch Texas Walker Ranger all the time. I know we lost Chuck Norris recently. But my dad, all types of shows. My brother later in life, right before he passed, had him watching Breaking Bad. And he really got into that, and the Better Call Saul, the other show, the spinoff of it. So that's what he was watching towards the end there. So I get people that love their TV shows, their Game of Thrones. Some people die for those shows. I was into Walking Dead for a while, and then I can't remember, about season 5 or maybe so, season 5-ish. That's when I kind of fell off, and they lost me a little bit, got a little too crazy for me, and I decided not to watch that. But I think for me, I'm more into movies. I love movies. My girlfriend Lindsay knows that I can watch any movie. It can be the dumbest movie ever or the best movie ever. I'm going to get something out of it. And I love movies. Love, Marvel movies, love superhero movies where there's a villain and a hero that has to overcome, right? But I can almost say there's not a movie I don't like. So I'm really big into movies. And more importantly, my favorite type of entertainment is comedy. And not shows or series or movies, but stand-up. Stand-up comedy is my top form of entertainment. It took me a while to sort of figure that out whenever I thought about it. I thought it was movies because I love my movie series, and I think as a kid growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, I almost lived my life like it's a movie, like this. So we didn't have tablets and other things. It was comic books and movies and cartoons, and you were either the villain or you were the hero. Cops and robbers, right? We used to play laser tag around the block with, never mind. We'll talk about that later, another episode. But comedy, I think comedy is one of those rare truth-telling forms, disguised as something else. Most comedy, most comedians can go places that other people can't, and they can help you find meaning, especially if you have the right mind state. Not every joke is funny, and comedians do have to be careful about pushing lines and limits. But I tend to look for those lines and limits, and it shows me your talent and your ability to hold my attention if you're able to, to show me something and catch me off guard a little bit and make me process it the way your mind works. And that's one of those beautiful things about comedy. So I thought about giving you guys my top 10 comedians of all times. And I've been listening to comedy a long time. And I think my brothers, I shouldn't have been doing it in the late 80s. Rest in peace, Mom and Dad. But my brothers would have the old Red Fox records and Richard Pryor records, and Rudy Ray Moore records downstairs, and they would get together and put them on, and I would sneak myself into that room and then listen to them. Early Eddie Murphy stuff, right? And I think my parents took the older kids, my older brothers, they saw Eddie Murphy Raw. Monty, Scott, and Jay. They went and they had that opportunity. I remember hearing about that, and I was sort of upset. And I remember seeing the Raw, the leather suit, on the flyers and stuff. And man, I wish I could go to Detroit from Lansing. We lived in Lansing, so I think they drove to Detroit. Maybe it was at Michigan State. I think it was at Michigan State. I gotta check with my brother Jay on that one. But long story short, I'm sure that was a great experience, and that's just how my brothers were. They were just constantly silly, cracking jokes. Their friends were silly. Our cousins always had a joke or two. It wasn't a normal day unless there was some rib cracking joke that just had you falling over the floor. So I know why I feel this way about comedy, and there's going to be some more we're going to talk about after. But let's get to this list here. Honorable mention. I have 2 of them. I couldn't decide. Had one extra name, so I threw them both as honorable mention. I'm going to keep these for my top 10 lists. But the 2 honorable mentions. First, I have Baron Vaughn. If you haven't heard that name, Google it. Baron Vaughn is a interesting comedian. He's been on some shows and Law and Order on a few spots. But he has a very unique way of delivering comedy, and to me, he's absolutely hilarious. Animated, does voices. He's a mixed kid, and so he just talks about some of that stuff. Arguing with his white stepfather, about who started slavery. Pretty funny stuff. So he gets an honorable mention, and please look him up. He hasn't done much lately, but someone that I always listen to, and he's one of my constant stations that I listen to on the apps, their music apps. My other honorable mention, Mr. Slapped in His Face himself, Chris Rock. Childhood, right? Like not my brothers, but my early teens. Chris Rock had a lot of funny stand-up and a lot of good material. His movies were great to me. Pootie Tang, that's another one. Please go watch Pootie Tang if you haven't seen it. Hilarious. And everything that he ever produced or put out, like from a comedy perspective, I loved it. I connected with it. He's got the big teeth like me and the long chin. So Everybody Hates Chris. What a great show. The cartoon version. It's funny how many brother pairs you have and sibling pairs you have that are successful in comedy. So his brother Tony Rock is hilarious too, and he's unique in his own way. They're not the same. So I could go on a tangent forever, but those are my 2 honorable mentions. So let's dive into the good stuff here. At number 10, we have Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac is hilarious. I remember watching Def Comedy Jam, and he took me for a ride early on. Watching those episodes late at night on HBO. Bernie, same thing, had a great show. Funny on stage and off the stage, and just had a mind that was just so unique. The stories about his family, from the Kings of Comedy. And I wish we could have had more. Just imagine how many more specials we could have had out of him. But I'm glad we have that special. My kids now watch the Bernie Mac show, which I love. They watch Everybody Hates Chris as well. But I can connect with my kids, and later on when they get a little older, I can introduce the comedy to them. So that's pretty cool. And okay, so at number 9, we have D.L. Hughley. Love DL. Hosted BET Comic View, another Kings of Comedy participant there. Funny. Love how he talks about his family. Family comedians are great to me. I feel like he's fairly honest, funny in so many ways, and could go on and on why I like him. Wish he could do some more, movies and that type of thing, but his stand-up is great. He's a person that I would definitely go see if he comes to West Michigan. At number 8, we have Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney used to write for the greats, used to write for the great Richard Pryor. Excuse me. And funny in his own right. Homie, they don't understand, homie. They don't understand. So Paul Mooney had that voice, wasn't afraid to go there. And the racial jokes were great. The jokes about OJ were great. Stories of him and Richard Pryor are absolutely hilarious. So I have Paul Mooney at number 8. At number 7, Bill Cosby. I know that's controversial, but Bill should probably be a little bit higher. Bill's funny, man. And if you can make people laugh without cussing, and even more so from a entertainment and what he was offering the public for what he showed us, I'm only going to stick with that. It gave black people an identity, a way to be, and his comedy also reflected healthy family activity. My 14-year-old can tell you about Dad is great, give me the chocolate cake. And, how we talked about that and how it had eggs in it. It had wheat. And I let them have chocolate cake for breakfast. That to this day is one of the best skits because Dad is great, give me the chocolate cake. So my kids will say that when they see chocolate cake. So he has an impact on me from a perspective. And of course, his show had a big impact on what I thought was possible to see an African-American doctor and a successful family. Theo was another character on that show that had a big impact on me, or reminded me of what my brothers were, could be, or, in that same age range at the time when I was younger. So I was Rudy's age. I was a lot younger. And then, of course, A Different World was another great show, spinoff of that show, and probably one of the reasons that I decided to go to TSU, to a historically black university, to play golf, to start off there. So Bill Cosby at number 7. At number 6, Martin Lawrence. Man, what could I say about Martin Lawrence? I remember being a freshman in high school. At lunchtime, a friend told me to hop in this car. And I'm like, what is everybody in this car doing? And we weren't doing anything bad. We weren't doing anything illegal. There wasn't any. So, but what was going on in there was Martin Lawrence comedy from the 90s was in there. And, it's the first time I listened to comedy in a car instead of music. And the atmosphere, listening to him, I was able to listen to the stories and dive into it. And I remember just laughing so hard I almost threw up in that car in just a 20-minute time span of listening to Martin Lawrence. So history with Martin. Obviously I love the Bad Boy movies. He's been doing stand-up lately. I'm not really a fan of the last special that I saw. But I wish him the best. And Martin Lawrence is on that list at number 6. At number 5, we have Sinbad. Once again, guys, if you can make me laugh without cussing, that's a talent, right? And he was a clean comic that would talk about his dad and his family and how he was as a young man. And it had an impact on me. But I thought it was cool that I could listen to him with my mom and dad in the room, and we're all laughing genuinely about the stories he would tell. He recently had a stroke, I believe, in the past few years, but he deserves his flowers as being a great comedian, one of my favorites, and could hold his own with anybody. A great comedian. At number 4, this might surprise people, Dave Chappelle. A little bit lower on the list than people probably expected, but Dave's great, one of my favorites. Could he be higher? Maybe, but he's so talented. Love everything he does. Love the show. Even Lil D's voice is kind of Dave Chappelle-ish a little bit. Lil D's hanging here, can't see him maybe, but he's down here below. But I really appreciate him not going for money and being able to give it up and kind of disappearing and coming back. That's a great thing to do. So he deserves all the credit, and he knew who he was. He knew where his talents were, and he trusted himself, and the payoff came back for him. So he's hilarious. Like I said, I know there's some LGBTQ, questions and issues that certain people have with him. But from that comedy perspective, we all have to be able to laugh at ourselves a little bit. And, on a related note, like, if you ever watched the movie Tropic Thunder, with Robert Downey Jr., he did it in as a black person in blackface. But 5 minutes into it, I wasn't even worried about that anymore because it was funny, it was tastefully done, and he did it right. So I'm just saying that to say that we don't have to agree with everybody, and hopefully we can see the intent of the artist. So Dave Chappelle is at number 4, and he's still got plenty of years to do a lot of great stuff there. At number 3, George Carlin. Love George Carlin. There's a joke about swimming in the Mississippi or the Hudson River, and how people told him not to do it because it was toxic. But he said we didn't get polio because we swam in the Hudson River. So look him up. Look up some of his original stuff. George Carlin was great. Played on words. An intelligent person. Several of these top 10 people are very bright people, intelligent people that can take your mind on a tangent just with a word or an expression. And George Carlin was one of those people for me. And I miss him now. I see a lot of him in some of these other comedians that didn't make the list. I think Louis C.K. has a lot of George Carlin in him, and a lot of others. But George Carlin's at number 3. At number 2, we have the late, great Richard Pryor. So much I could say about him. Loved everything from his movies with Gene Wilder, to his first record, the podcast. I'll just call it That N-Word's Crazy. But go look that up. That was one of those records that I wasn't supposed to listen to that my dad had. And it had a big impact on me after putting that in after school one day when no one was home, and listening to that record, right? Something that these kids nowadays will never do. I still have those records, but my kids will never touch them. But Richard Pryor was just a genius. The way he tells stories, his storytelling ability was crazy. His characters from Mudbone to, Madam, to all the characters he ever played. So much respect for him. And that's why he's at number 2. But my number 1 all-time favorite, and I quote him all the time, and a lot of times people don't know because no one does their research anymore. But my number 1 is Red Fox. Red Fox. He had a show, Sanford and Son. But one day I found myself searching, and I found stand-up. And I remembered, on an app, I think it was on Pandora. But I remember as a kid having the red record. I think it was the Potty record. I can't remember, but there was a red record, Red Fox record. And that was the one my brothers wouldn't let me listen to. And one day I pulled that one out and listened to that. And then I was hooked, right? We could tell the stories about Confucius. And like you said, Confucius say, crowded elevator smells different to small people, right? Ton of jokes and clever jokes, and World War II jokes that are just hilarious. He's a mixed kid, so he would have some great mixed jokes that were awesome. He talked about being one of 3 kids born, Red, Ned, and Ted. I could go on and on, but once again, storytelling, wit, and smarts. And enough to hold the television show for several seasons. So look up some of these names and some of their comedy, if you're a person that's like me and appreciates it. So that's my top 10 list. Honorable mentions: Baron Vaughn, Chris Rock. At number 10, we have Bernie Mac. At number 9, D.L. Hughley. At number 8, Paul Mooney. Number 7, Bill Cosby. Number 6, Martin Lawrence. Number 5, Sinbad. Number 4, Dave Chappelle. Number 3, George Carlin. Number 2, Richard Pryor. And number 1, Red Fox. That's my list. And some of the favorites I'm listening to right now, Ali Sadiq. I had a chance to see him here in West Michigan when he I think it was last year. Ryan Davis, very clever. You know, if you like Dave Chappelle and that type of wit and process, please, he is so intelligent. He has a great YouTube special out on YouTube, so please check that out. And Carlos Miller, one of the 85 South guys from the Wilding Out show with Nick Cannon. But same thing, man. Just a raw comedian that's funny, makes me laugh every time. You know, the down south humor and accent is hilarious. So those are the people I'm listening to. And if there's anybody else you can think of, please let me know. And of course, there's some other ones that didn't make the list. Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy. I know you guys are upset about that one. But he just doesn't have a long enough time doing stand-up for me. Jamie Foxx is another one. You know, Mike Epps. Kevin Hart's not really my cup of tea anymore. I liked him when he first came out, but his last 2 specials have not been good. A couple of 40-year-old jokes that were great, but that's about it. So, but that's my top 10 list. All right, so real quick, let's get into the coach's tip for the week. And what I want you to do, you know, we have an asset here when we have this this TV on and we have these major tournaments and just PGA tournaments in general. On the Golf Channel and other channels, they show these guys on the range nonstop. So for all of you swing hard, out of your shoe people, I want you to watch range sessions of good players on TV. Watching the Masters, I learned a ton. I saw more controlled shots and a mind on precision that I saw on aggression. And I think that's something that we can learn. So challenge yourself. If you have a concept or a thought, watch a range session. Watch when these guys are getting ready to tee off. You know, maybe an hour before their range session will pop up. They'll start off with half wedges. They'll work up through their bag. And I won't see an aggressive shot until even when they get their driver in their hand. And those aggressive shot on balance, tempo is perfect. Center of gravity is under control. It's not loosing all over the place. Okay. So, you know, this is just a real simple coach's tip. But how can we be observant and look at both sides of whatever spectrum that we're processing or looking at? You all want to swing hard, fast, aggressive. But you all have seen an example of a good golf swing on the range, someone you played with, and 9 times out of 10, you tell me what? It looks so effortless when they do it. It's because it is. That's what makes it repeatable. Okay? So the effortless, you know, journey is what we're after here. And I'm working on some new ways and I have some videos that I'm going to put out that are going to help you create, you know, that more effortless swing and hopefully with a little more power, but still maintaining connection and good tempo. Okay. But let's watch. Let's use the TV. Let's use these apps. The Masters footage, you know, you'll find every golf swing probably on YouTube and elsewhere. But you tell me when these guys are swinging hard and off balance or out of their shoes or jumping. I'm not seeing a lot of that. And at the Masters, there was a lot of side slope holes, you know, as well. So, you know, even with that, stability first, balance first, aggression second. Square that club face up, know where the golf ball is going, because if it misses the green by 2 feet, then it's going off one direction or not, okay? So that's our coach's tip for the week. Remember to observe good players and challenge your thought process by seeing if those players are doing it before an event or before a tournament, okay? Now, for the Golf Tech Corner, I had a question for everyone. I'm curious to see who uses yardage. These are different yardage devices, but who uses the GPS unit type devices or puts them in their phone versus the people that use rangefinders? Not a right or wrong question, a curiosity question. I think what we're finding for more players, the tour players, the caddies, measuring golf courses, college players, high school players, we see predominantly rangefinders there. For the leisure golfer, the Sunday golfer, the weekend golfer, the league golfer. I think it's more of a fair split. But I'm seeing a lot more of those GPS units. And then now with golf carts, even at Indian Trails, the city course where I'll teach on occasion, or Blyfield, both instances, we have those GPS units in the cart that help you with your yardage and can show you a layout of just the green or the entire hole, where your cart is, how far, gives you all the numbers that you could ever need. And you can use it as a Bluetooth for music as well. So I'm thinking those GPS devices are also helping, and we're seeing more of those. Pace of play, I think it's about the same. I think it's the individual that's looking at the information. If they're over-processing and overlooking and overthinking, then you can use either one to a detriment there. But I'm just curious, who's using what? Who uses a rangefinder? Let me know. Who uses those GPS units or just has an app on their phone? Now, last but not least, before we get out of here for today, I got to go work out and get my child after school here. Our lessons learned segment. Sorry about that, but it's tasty. Hopefully it sounded good. For lessons learned, I think this goes for everybody. It's just a reminder to be punctual. It's so rude to be late or right there, right on time. And if you're like me, you've had several coaches and people that tell me, if you're on time, you're late, right? So being punctual. And I'm thinking of a story with my golf buddies, my high school golf buddies. This is later in life, after we've all graduated college, probably in our mid-20s. And I had this tendency to show up right on time, or a second or two right before our tee time would start. And one time I was getting ready to do that, and I ended up catching a light and ended up being late, about 5 minutes late. And because I was late, we had to let another group play through. A bunch of older guys that looked a lot slower than what we wanted to play at, and there was no one in front of them, right? So I get there, and my buddy Jeff was like, "Who do you think you are?" And I thought he was joking at first. "Who do you think you are?" And he cursed at me. "Who the F do you think you are? You do this every time," right? And I always got my attention because this is my friend saying this to me. This isn't my mom or dad. And you can tell he's frustrated. It affects everything, the bets, who's playing with who, all the stuff that needs to be done prior to play. And every time I show up like this, now we have to, deal with that, in a rush, trying to get off the first hole. So, after he yelled at me, I'm glad he did. Thanks, Jeff. I haven't been late since. And I've made it a point to be punctual. And even as a kid, I hated when my dad would show up like sort of late or right on time for football practice or basketball practice. He had more excuse than I did in my early 20s. I didn't have any responsibilities. He had to work, get other kids, more stuff as a parent. So for you kids that are dealing with that, please be reasonable and understand that your parents sometimes do have time restraints and it's difficult. But despite that, the controllables, control them and make sure you're punctual when you can be. Okay. So I do my best to do that for golf lessons, for everything in my life. And I want to just give you that little tidbit and remind you to do that. And I think the benefit of that is that you're prepared. For golf, you're going to play better. You're not going to feel rush or anxiety. My girlfriend last year was doing a marathon with her brother. I don't know if maybe it was a half marathon. But either way, they showed up on time, but the parking situation downtown Grand Rapids was a little iffy. And they couldn't find a place to park and had to park, about a mile away. So because of all of the issues, now they had to rush to get there. And this year, and this is what we have to do, we learn, right? She's doing that same race again, and now they have a different plan. The first time it wasn't necessarily their fault. They went in an early time, but construction and some of the variables that they didn't understand or know about, now they're taken into consideration in year 2, and it won't be an issue. And I guarantee they have better times and a better race because of it. Okay? So be punctual, be on time. Kids, be early to the course. Be early to those appointments. Be ready and prepared for those interviews and everything else in between. And then I think we'll all be ready to roll. All right. But thanks for joining me as always. Remember, for all your golfing needs, to look at dnagolfinstruction.com, appointments, scheduling, mission statement, what we offer, and even the apparel store. But we want to help you find your DNA, and we're excited to get this golf season started right. So you guys have a great day.